Block 923867 contains the specific network coordinates where this asset was instantiated. Within this payload, a single transaction carries the hash ending in 7C82. This specific transaction executed the etching for the rune ngf.btc.am. The metadata defined at the moment of etching establishes a fixed, immutable supply of exactly 5.93 billion units. The asset is programmed with zero divisibility. By preventing fractional ownership, the protocol enforces a rigid unit of account tailored for institutional balance sheets. This entire supply is 100% pre-mined. The code lacks any mechanism for future inflation or token burning, locking the supply permanently. This static on-chain record serves as the base layer for the broader economic architecture. Scaling real-world assets on Bitcoin involves navigating the friction between cryptographic protocol rules and international securities law. Tokens that combine network utility with an expectation of profit consistently trigger securities classifications under frameworks like the Howey test. The architecture analyzed here attempts to address this by employing a dual asset decoupling model. This model operates by physically separating the asset's utility from its economic rights at the protocol level. The decoupling strategy uses a single UTXO source node splitting into two pathways. Path A carries the NGF rune, a non-economic access token with zero yield. Path B contains distinct ordinal inscriptions representing the actual economic and governance rights. These specific ordinals are tethered to off-chain special purpose vehicles, or SPVs. These SPVs are the legal entities that house the productive projects and the underlying legal contracts. This physical separation at the protocol layer ensures the base rune avoids the characteristics of a security. By isolating the economic claims within the SPV layer, the base network asset remains unencumbered by the same regulatory requirements. Managing a 5.93 billion unit premine without centralizing control requires a transparent governance structure. The allocation schematic shows 30% reserved for liquidity, 25% for productive projects, and 15% for social and governance mandates. These funds are secured by a 3 of 5 multi-sig custody model, requiring coordinated authorization from the issuer, an independent auditor, and external partners. Integrity is maintained through a mandatory 6-month key rotation schedule for all signing parties. A check of the official JSON Draft 07 metadata shows that the commitment bytes field is currently marked as pending. Without a SHA-256 checksum of this metadata anchored to the blockchain, the legal schema remains an off-chain document, modifiable without a cryptographic record. Moving from the legal layer to the execution layer requires a shift in focus toward the raw memory constraints of the protocol. The ecosystem is designed to bridge Layer 1 primitives, like transaction IDs, into Layer 2 state engines. This data transfer relies on mathematically rigid byte boundaries to ensure the two layers remain in sync. Simple Serialize, or SSC, is the mandatory framework enforcing these boundaries during the bridging process. This diagram shows a Merkle tree building itself from uniform data. However, standard Bitcoin transactions frequently contain variable length data that does not naturally fit these fixed blocks. If unconstrained L1 data enters this pipeline, the resulting misalignment can corrupt the tree hashing process. A malicious actor could exploit this by crafting an oversized script on the Bitcoin network and attempting to force it through the serialization bridge. If left unchecked, this payload could trigger a consensus panic and violently halt the entire Layer 2 state machine. To prevent this, the architecture uses custom Rust wrappers, such as Bitcoin TX out, to filter incoming data. These wrappers enforce a strict limit defined by the max script size constant. When an oversized block is detected, the check script size function triggers a rejection, causing the ingestion attempt to shatter. The system identifies and rejects these scripts before any memory is allocated for their processing. This preemptive rejection is a primary defense against vector-based memory exhaustion attacks. Enforcing explicit memory boundaries in the code is the only way to build a reliable bridge between Bitcoin and its scaling layers. This matrix provides a complete assessment of the system's technical and regulatory vulnerabilities. The concentration of the 5.93 billion units among 11 initial holders is the primary technical risk, requiring transparent long-term management. Conversely, the technical risks associated with data serialization are mitigated by the strict Rust implementation we just analyzed. On the regulatory front, the primary challenge is the execution of KYC and AML frameworks. The dual asset model quarantines this friction within the SPV layer, ensuring the utility token remains separate from the security-like characteristics of the investment layer. Systemic risk is managed here by strictly separating the technical domain from the legal domain. Tokenizing real-world assets requires a resolution between cryptographic rigidity and the requirements of legal compliance. NesgesFinance addresses this by applying the logic of deterministic state machines to both its code and its corporate structure. Byte-level enforcement at the protocol layer is the fundamental prerequisite for building compliant economics. The future of asset tokenization depends on treating regulatory compliance as a strict protocol boundary condition.